This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to the Celebrate Marriagecast, where we hope to restore and reclaim godly marriages through honest and real conversations.
Welcome to episode 54. To you, our listener, we are so glad you're joining us today. Thanks for taking this time to invest in your marriage, and truly so glad that you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, it's an exciting episode here.
Yeah, the big issue.
The big issue. You know what we're going to talk about today?
What's the big issue?
The presidential election.
Oh my word. They're going to take our show off the air.
Hold on. Before you click off or
Our numbers might go up.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
Cause a ruckus.
Maybe. No, but we want to talk about a very important topic, and really, joking aside, we are going to talk about a little bit about kind of the election, the debate. Not really. You'll see how it unfolds. I'm super excited about it because
I'm excited.
I think there's some really cool stuff here, but. Michelle,
I love how you tie in current things, because that's obviously, we're in this season, so it's applicable.
Right.
The big issue. I like it.
The big issue. Right. So Michelle, we have both openly shared to all of you, our listeners, our biggest issue probably in our marriage is communication. Yep. Right. We've shared that with our guest counselor, Tony Bohr. We shared that openly, that communication really is tough.
We're wired different. Believe it or not, Ryan and I are pretty different.
Yeah, we are, very much so. And we're going to dive into that a little bit today too. But as I was thinking about this in regards to communication, joking aside, we had talked about the presidential debate. And as I was watching this here a few weeks back, I couldn't help but kind of make this comparison that I feel like a lot of times we as spouses, as husband and wife, communicate as if we're in a presidential debate.
Okay.
So we're gonna pull three things kind of with that in mind.
We should have brought podiums for today.
Oh yeah.
We could have had our own debate.
Right.
But that's not the goal.
Right. So there were three things that kind of jumped out to me, and as I'm looking at this, and as we approach communication in our marriage, I think there's three things we can learn from the presidential debate.
I'm so excited.
Are you ready?
I'm just smiling at you because I'm like, how does Ryan come up with this? This is great. I'm excited. Fresh content every week.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. God just gives it to you.
Yeah.
And in life events too. Somebody had asked us that. How do you have so many different topics? I think Tony had asked us that.
Yeah.
We're like, well, fresh content every week. Usually it's something big going on.
Right.
But yeah, great. Let's jump in.
Yeah. So the first thing that I learned from watching this debate that happened is that I think there's a lot of buzz going on right now, like who won the debate? This person won, this person won. No, there's all this back and forth. And I think so often we approach our conversations in marriage the same way.
Okay, so winner, loser?
Right.
Who won that conversation?
Right. So okay, we're having a conversation and I have to win.
Yeah.
And we've said this before. I think the problem with that is when I win, that means that you lose. And therefore, what does that do to our marriage?
Yeah. Then we're not both winners.
No.
Yeah.
And so I think so often we come at this as I have my agenda, you have your agenda, and it's one or the other. And so I think so often when we communicate together as a husband and wife, that real answer probably is somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
Right? We both bring value to our conversations. We both have feelings. We both have, ideas. And I think so often we get in this polarizing spot and instead, it really is probably the answer is somewhere in that middle, somewhere in that gray area, if you will.
Sure.
And I think when we communicate, we have to have that in mind.
Ryan, I think about, and maybe this would be a good time to give an example. Is now a good time? Can I give an example?
Yeah,
you know which one I'm
absolutely.
talking about. So I love that because it's going back to the principle that we share often here, Ryan had coined this early on, but same team. You're on the same team. So you guys, here's what's going on. You know that our daughter went to college, and we have been fortunate to have these weekly phone calls from her where she will FaceTime, and it's super exciting to get to hear from Ella. So last week, this is our big disagreement, and really it boils down to communication and also how we're wired as well. So last week, Ella calls, and because Ryan is still recovering from his ACL surgery, there's complications. There's a lot of inflammation. So he is very limited in his mobility. So I think you were at home. I was actually out doing errands, something for our family. And so it doesn't even feel like I'm doing all the work. It feels like I'm doing all the work and more because there's extra work that this whole thing has created. Sure. So it's like, I feel like I'm doing like 150% of the household chores. It just feels crazy. So I'm out running an errand, and I get home, and our son is not in bed. It's half an hour past his bedtime. He's just walking around, and you're over on the couch with your leg propped up. Granted, it was elevated and iced. It wasn't just like he was kicking back, but that was kind of the perception. It's just Ryan's sitting there on the couch with his legs propped up, just kicking back. And who was he talking to but our daughter? He was FaceTiming Ella. They were yucking it up and laughing and talking. And I don't want to say I lost it, but I was really frustrated.
Sure.
I didn't explode or anything, but I just was like, who are you talking to? I'm talking to Ella. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be a part. And you're like, well, come over here. Well, then I had to go outside. We're taking care of some things for our neighbors. So I was watering their plants and just all these extra things. So now I'm just extra mad because first I was out doing an errand. Now I'm taking care of other people's stuff that we had agreed to do. And I'm taking care of dogs and all this stuff. And I had asked our son, I was like, how long have they been talking? And of course, he's little and his sense of time is, a little bit, maybe not realistic. So he's like, I don't know, pretty long time, maybe half an hour. So then I really get mad and I'm like, they've been talking for half an hour without me. So bottom line of this is I go in and I tell Ryan, hey, I'm really frustrated that you took that phone call. And now Ryan is very analytical and practical. Right. So he was like, well, she called. So I answered. Okay. So this kind of strung on. We went to bed, we prayed, and we went to bed not angry. But the next day, something else was referenced about it. And I was kind of frustrated again and bubbled up. So I brought it up again. And Ryan was like, Ella called. And I answered the phone call. And I was like, that's a disconnect because that wasn't why I was mad. I wasn't mad that you answered our daughter's phone call. Of course, answer it. What I really wanted was for you to realize how important that was to me and be like, you know what, kiddo? Your mom's not here right now. She'll be back in 10 minutes. Why don't you wait? Because even though you guys are like, hey, come into the phone call, I would have missed all the first versions of the story. You know how that is? Like, oh, okay, so you'll retell me about the clubs you joined, the job you got, all these, the life group, the church home you found, all these cool things. But it's like not the first version of it. It's like the recap, not as many details, not as exciting. Do you guys get that? And that was what I think you didn't understand. Right. You were just like, she called, I answered.
Right.
And you're like, what do you want me to do? She called, so I answered. I was like, well, that's not the problem. It's more so realizing how important it is to me and speaking up on my behalf and just saying, hey, 10 more minutes, mom will be home. Why don't you wait?
Sure.
But in that instance, you were just very analytical, not understanding why I was mad. She called, I answered. Why are you mad about that? But it was more than that. I'm very emotional. So to me, it was like, you don't understand the why. I'm not mad that you answered the phone. I'm mad that you didn't just wait a few minutes. So
Sure.
I think you're very factual. I'm very feeling. So when we have things that come up, it seems to be related to that.
Yeah. I think that is a great segue into the second point.
Okay.
That I learned from watching this debate.
Okay. Does it tie into our phone call?
Yeah, it definitely ties into our phone call. And it really, the second really thing that I think you need to look at is communication style. And there's so much to this. And, looking at things like tone. What kind of tone are you using? What kind of words are you using?
Sure.
Because those things will dictate how you communicate.
Sure. I don't care what we have for dinner. I don't care what we have for dinner.
Right. Yeah, those are two very different things. And part of like if your tone is very sharp,
sure,
right? I can see why there's communication problems. Because either, well, geez, what's your problem? Or I come back at you with the same tone that you come at me with.
It escalates.
It
right?
escalates very quickly.
And it puts that other person on the defensive.
Right. Yeah,
because it feels personal then. It feels like an attack. But really, it's about the issue. What should we have for dinner? Maybe the frustration's that you don't have food, you haven't planned your groceries, but it's not necessarily your spouse's fault, Yeah. So making the issue about the issue, not the person.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said this before, Michelle, another thing when it comes to style is looking at fact or feeling. This is probably our biggest issue that we, when we have communication problems, it's typically, I don't know, I think it's probably typically this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tend to answer, I tend to communicate very factually. Like, here's the details. Here's what I got. And, you want to know like, whoa, what happened here? Like, how to, like all the additional details, all the additional feelings.
Yeah.
When I'm just like, yep, went to the store, got this.
Right. Which is why the situation with our daughter's phone call probably drove me extra crazy.
Right.
Because you relayed on, oh yeah, she joined a club. And I said, oh, well, how did it happen? When did she go? What club? Who did she go with? Were there friends there?
Right. Oh yeah. Perfect.
And you're like, I don't know. It's like a physical therapy club. And I was like, well, like, when did she find out about it? And what are they going to do? How often do they meet?
Yeah. Yeah. All of those details. And I'm like, I don't know. She joined the club.
Right. Which is just amplified the whole issue of me not being on the call because that was what I would have been able to get. So it is a good illustration of that. So yeah.
I think the other thing that a lot of couples have, and in all transparency, I think this is another spot where we're very different, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but maybe you have one spouse that's more of a presser,
sure,
that's going to press a situation, and one that is a processor, and so I think that's also for us a big difference in communication. I very much am a processor, like slow processor, like dial-up internet processing. You know what I mean?
We're talking like AOL,
right?
The free disc you would get at like Target.
Yeah,
that goes way back. I think that we were throwing around some ideas with Pastor Chris, our marriage and family pastor here at Celebrate Church, and talking about some things. And there was a date night, and one of the things that he was saying was, what are some fun questions that would be just neat to ask people? And I said, I think it'd be cool to ask people, what's something that used to drive you crazy about your spouse and now you really love and appreciate? And I think for us, it goes back to that communication style of, Ryan, you said one person's a presser, one person's a kind of withdrawer. And I think Verena Schnur-Alex did a great job of talking about this on her communication episode with us. I don't recall when that was, earlier this spring, but that was a great episode too, to go back. And if that's a specific issue, she talks about that. But, in the beginning, that would drive me crazy. I would be like, Ryan, just say something. I was like ready to go and just hash this issue out. And like, Ryan, say something. And he just said, Michelle, you don't want me to say anything right now. You don't want me to say what's on my mind because it's not going to be kind. And I realized that him kind of processing and withdrawing just a little bit was actually a really great act of serving me and loving me and kindness and just being a gentle leader of our household, because he knew that he wouldn't be his best self responding in that moment.
Yeah.
And then I learned to appreciate that Ryan's not giving an immediate response because it probably will just be fuel on the fire and it won't end up well.
Right. Right.
And now I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is such an important, I think, realization to understand, hey, what are our styles? Because we have, you may have vastly different, but I think part of it is realizing that, like, you have to realize that. And I think once you do, it will help you to communicate, just that example, Michelle. I mean, I don't know when we came to that realization, but it took a while.
Right.
It took a lot of our communication was strained, a little bit in the beginning of our marriage because we didn't realize that.
Yeah, if we would have a disagreement, it would just be a little bit difficult. And I think, Ryan, what you have done is also you've met me. It hasn't just been me meeting you and just allowing you to just sit and think forever, but you will say, hey, just let me give me a moment, so you communicate with me, because that would kind of drive me crazy if you just wouldn't say anything. But now you kind of give me throw me a little bit of a lifeline and you're like, hey, let me just think about this. Hey, Michelle, I hear you. Here, you might say something gentle and then you'll kind of think of it and we'll be able to circle back around.
Right.
So that's been helpful for me because I'm not just left hanging. And I think the more that we just communicate that way, the better it feels. And I think as a whole, I've really toned down. It's not combative or anything. It's just, we just can communicate because we know it's about the issue. We're on the same team. We're going in the same direction.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we want the same thing. Really, if you really look at the issue, we do want the same thing. It's just a different approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, Michelle, you ready for number 3?
Yes.
Okay. This is the third thing that I learned just about communication in marriage, in life.
Okay.
The third thing that really jumped out to me is, are you willing to answer the tough questions?
Okay.
So you're watching this debate, right? And somebody gets asked a question and all of a sudden they somehow they completely did a left turn and they're talking about something entirely different. And they're not even answering the question that came.
Sure. They're deflecting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing about it because it's funny, but I think so often we can do this in our marriage.
Okay. So what would be an example?
So I was thinking about this and even, just in regards to last week's episode with Pastor Chris, our marriage and family pastor here.
It was a great episode.
It really was. And there's a lot there. And it's just are you willing to have the tough conversations? Because I think communication is so important, but you have to be able to communicate through those tough things. It can't just be, how was your day? Great. How was your day? Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you're not being vulnerable and real with your spouse either. There's no connection there.
Right.
It's just surface level.
Right.
Yeah.
So the immediate example I thought of was finances.
Sure.
I think finances is a perfect topic because I think a lot of people, it's uncomfortable. People don't like talking about it. And I'm just thinking of this example. This has not happened in our household. I'm just using this as an example. But, let's say you're looking at your bank account and you see all these everyday Starbucks.
Are you sure this isn't personal, Ryan?
Yeah, no, it's not, and you're like, well, man, Michelle, you spend hundreds of dollars at Starbucks every month, and then your response would be well, yeah, but you do this. You spend all this money on hunting gear.
Right.
And so it's you instantly deflect.
Sure.
And you're like, whoa, but you,
yeah.
And it's you never really answer the question.
Yeah, that's a great example because it could just be a curiosity. It could be, hey, are there, maybe the budget's tight and there are other things, or maybe it's just your spouse is wanting to know about your habits and what you're doing there, or just trying to troubleshoot budget issues. But I can see that. Yeah, if you are able to have a conversation about that, you know what, love, you're right. I kind of have been, you know what? The pumpkin spice latte season's really taken me down a slippery slope. Actually, that's not, I do not care for. The cold brew is okay, but in general, the pumpkin spice, I think they're too sweet. I'm not really a sweet coffee drinker. It just, that's irrelevant. Look, I feel like I'm being defensive.
You deflective
I feel
right
like
now?
I'm being deflective. Yeah. Okay, so I think if that spouse can be like real and authentic and just give an honest answer. You're right, love. I have really fallen off the deep end. Or, you know what? Hey, the reason I've been there a lot lately is that, I have these work meetings and I'm meeting so-and-so and so-and-so. And there have been board meetings and it just works best for us to meet there. And actually, I'm meeting for coffee. I've asked them if we can meet for coffee instead of lunch because they thought that would fit in our budget better.
Yeah.
So it actually could be a huge oh, wow, that's super cool, Michelle. Thanks for doing that. And that is true. I do a lot of coffee meetings because a lot of lunches that just adds up too.
Absolutely.
So it could just be a understanding, help your spouse understand. And it may just be a really positive thing. And then they would go from thinking, oh, wow, you spend $5 twice this week on coffee to, oh, wow, that was really cool and thoughtful of you. Instead of going to lunch twice this week, you had coffee. Well, hey, thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
But that spouse has to give them the opportunity to have that conversation and to hear that side of the story.
Yeah.
And then it might lead into, oh, hey, also, Ryan, I've noticed that you have been spending money on this, and then maybe you can get there. But I love that. Don't go right to deflection. Yeah. Have the tough conversation.
Yeah. I think it's so important to have those conversations. And if there is, if there is an issue or if there was a mistake made or, you know what, it's been a really hard week and I've just needed coffee every morning. But just acknowledging and also saying you know what, did this, it didn't work. Or, hey, here's why. I'm sorry. I messed up or I made a mistake. Of being accountable but being willing to have those really hard conversations to move your marriage along.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's great. I think I was just thinking about our budget. I feel like I tried to do some of that proactively recently. I had a subscription I have a website and then I had some scheduling subscription services and I had a LinkedIn. I had upgraded my LinkedIn and I forgot that it was upgraded. So I just came to you and I was like, Ryan, hey, I just want you to know that we spent this much extra money. It was like $35, $39 a month. And it was a few extra months than I would have liked. And I'm sorry, but I canceled it.
Yeah.
But that could be something too, where if there is an issue that is, or something happens that might be important to your spouse to know, trying to just communicate that with them in advance too. I just wanted you to know. I was like, hey, and I was kind of proud of myself. I went through and canceled all these subscriptions of things that, how it is. You kind of forget or they're on different cards or apps and you kind of lose track.
Yeah.
Hate to say it, but some of them are like, oh my gosh, how did this slip through? So just cleaning that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michelle, just sitting here talking, I thought of a bonus one. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So I just was thinking about this. If you and your spouse find yourself in, that your communication is really tough, and you're finding that you're having a lot of problems. I'm just thinking about a debate again. I think there is a good opportunity to find a good moderator who can help you. And, we've mentioned him on the show, but I think, Tony Bohr, counselor, therapist, has been on the show several times kind of saying the same thing of man, we are just really at each other. Maybe it would help to have a good moderator.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he said that when people come into his office, they're actually like, oh, wow, that's what you meant? Because there's just a neutral party there to moderate. And it takes off some of those high emotions.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to totally duke it out in a counselor's office, so it allows a safer environment to learn how to work through those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, a moderator. That was a great one.
Yeah, there we go.
Do you want to recap the 4?
Yeah.
Do you remember them all?
Yeah, absolutely. So we managed to do this without really bringing up anything about the presidential debate, which was the goal. So good job to you, Michelle. Good job. Absolutely. So again, just to recap, lessons learned. I think one of really losing your agenda, being willing to compromise, being willing to fight for, often, Michelle, you said this, you have the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you both have ideas, you both have things you can bring to the table.
Yep.
Find the answer.
Yep. We shared the story of the phone call with our daughter. We both want to talk to our daughter.
Right.
Just got to find a way to make it work.
Right. So number 2 is figure out your style.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out those things, how you best communicate, how your spouse best communicates, and then make those adjustments as needed.
Yep. And for that one, we share the example. Ryan's very factual. I'm very feeling oriented. So how do you process through that and communicate?
Yeah. Number 3, answer the tough questions. Be willing to have those conversations. Step into those. Do the work to have those conversations. I can guarantee you it will be, your marriage will be better because of it.
So great. That one, the budget example.
Yeah.
Great example.
Yeah. And the bonus one I thought of during the show, if you're having troubles communicating, find a good moderator, find a good pastor, therapist, counselor that can help you.
Ryan, great show. That was so good.
Hey, thanks.
I love that.
Thanks, Michelle.
That was really good.
Thanks.
Do we have time for a mystery question?
I think so.
It is that time.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, let me grab the jar.
The mystery question.
I'm not certain. There it is.
All right, there we go.
All right, mystery
I had
question.
to get out of the way of the pumpkins. I brought in some fall pumpkins.
Yeah.
Since
fall.
we are in October. So happy fall, y'all. Okay, Ryan, you want to read it?
All right.
This is our last one. You guys send in some questions.
Yeah.
Send it to our text line so that we know we will answer anything that you send in. And if it's really tough, then we'll bring in a counselor and they'll answer it.
Yeah.
But we will answer anything you want to know.
Okay, Michelle, what is it about your spouse that makes your heart still flutter?
Ah, Ryan, you're such a gentleman. I feel like
thanks.
I feel like you still date me and you will send me messages. Today I sent you one, but usually at 11/11, which is our anniversary, 11/11/11, you'll send me a message.
Yeah.
Or you'll just do really sweet service type things for me. You'll give me a back massage. You'll just do something kind for me. You'll send me a lot of encouraging messages. You know that my love language is affirmation. And those things just make my heart flutter. And you're really handsome.
Ah,
And I feel
nice.
like you've never stopped trying.
Yeah.
You've had incredible health challenges, but you always try to, take care of yourself, look handsome. Just you try to put your best foot forward. For
Yeah.
me.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say I think something similar in that line of just I think continuing to grow. I think continuing to be like adventurous, continuing to have new adventures, just not kind of settle. I think we very much are good partners in that, and it's been super fun. And I feel like it continues to grow. I think growth is something that still makes, I don't know, I still get excited to wake up every day and just see what life has in store.
Thanks, love.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And you're very beautiful.
Oh, thanks,
Yeah.
love. Thank you. To our listener, thank you for joining us today on the Celebrate Marriagecast. And hey, we would love to know, text in and let us know what mystery question do you want to hear? That was our last one. We need more mystery questions. We'll answer anything you want to know. If it's too hard, we will get a counselor to come in and answer it for us or with us. Also, let us know what of these 4 topics that Ryan talked about today, the 4 points resonated most with you. What can you relate with? And hey, if you want, let us know what still makes your heart flutter for your spouse. That would be so cute to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. You can text those to 605-951-0110. It's just a Google number. Nobody will answer. So just text that in, or you can leave a voicemail, 605-951-0110. We'll have that in our show notes as well. Hey, also we have our Instagram, Celebrate Marriagecast, and just share this episode. You never know who is going through, these silent battles at home that this episode could impact. So share this. It's great. So many people deal with communication challenges, and this could be a great help to your network. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope you have a great week.
Have a great week.